All right, wildcard weekend is over, so we're looking ahead to the divisional round here on this week's NFL show from OTB. Cian Fahey has made his biannual, is it 2 times a year trip to studio for us?
I think this is my 3rd time this season. I'm visiting you a lot.
Yeah, very good. Well, always en route to sunnier climes.
Yes, pretty much. It's January. I'm going to Los Angeles. I'm going to get that 21-degree weather for the next couple of days.
Yeah, very nice.
Rams game is on there too. So.
Yeah, it could be an all-LA final.
Ooh, well, that's getting a bit ahead of ourselves.
Not that much ahead. It's not beyond the bounds of possibility.
Well, here's the interesting thing about that. If we talked about this 3 months ago, we'd be saying, yeah, the Rams are the team that's going to be there. Now I'm kind of going, the Chargers are more likely to be there than the Rams, I think.
Yeah.
But the one thing is the Rams must be very happy that the Bears are gone, because they did not want to see that defense again.
Yeah. We should talk a bit about the Rams and how teams ebb and flow over the course of a season. And football seems to be one of those sports where your current form is way more important than what you've actually done over the course of the season. Like, you look back at, and maybe recent history skews this a little bit, in that you look at the 2 Giants teams that get hot and win the Super Bowl. No team who hasn't been in the bye hasn't qualified.
The Ravens.
Yeah. So it's a long. It's
12.
It's been, which isn't that long really. Like, you know, if you can remember the Ravens and the 2 Giants, which we can, it's like, I mean, the Eagles got the bye last year, did they?
Yeah, the Eagles were 1 seed last year, I believe.
Oh yeah, okay.
They were blowing teams out left and right. But like, it's this thing you always have to come back to with football when you're talking on like on a major scale rather than the minor, looking at like player evaluation, looking at overall teams. It's always a tiny sample. It's 16, 19 games, and then you have this one game sample, 1 game off in the playoffs. It's not like Champions League, for example, where you get a home and away leg, or the NBA where you get 7 games, hockey where you get 7 games. So what you're talking about there, I don't know if we would call it randomness or team being hot at the right time, or just specific matchups working out on the day, but there is that element of teams feel like they can win and they can beat anyone in front of them. There's also the idea that you can be a 6th seed and be 9-7, and you can be a 4th seed and be 10-6, and what's the actual difference there, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I mean, there was that year where the Panthers made it 7-8-1, and I think they were playing...
The Seahawks made it 7-9 with Matt Hasselbeck, with Marshawn Lynch had that run against the Saints. Yeah, so that's a long time ago now. That feels like it was more recent than it was.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about... I was going to say San Diego, but the LA Chargers, and that point that you're making about you don't get a home and away. They did kind of get a home and away. They got an away and away against Lamar Jackson, and it's funny how there was a belief going into that this week that was like, oh, it's possible to win with a rookie who's just doing stuff that nobody's seen, because it takes them a whole game to readjust. And then lo and behold, the Chargers are like, yeah, we know exactly what we're going to do because we saw you a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I really buy that, because like, it's not like Lamar Jackson isn't playing at all before you play him the first time. Like, you have these other games to look at and see exactly what they're doing. Yeah, maybe it's different when you've played against it specifically and you can get his tendencies, and it's easier to get the tendencies that way. I just feel it was more about Marty Mornhinweg is the offense coordinator for the Ravens. Very good season, very, very good year overall. But in this game, not good. In entering the 4th quarter, Lamar Jackson had thrown the ball 9 times, and they had run the ball as an offense as a whole 21 times. That's not their balance. For what everyone talks about, they only run the ball, he can't throw. He was averaging 22, 23 pass attempts per game.
Yeah.
That's not a lot, but it's not 9 entering the 4th quarter.
Yeah.
He abandoned the run too quickly, and then James Hurst at left guard was just getting dominated by Melvin Ingram, and that kind of took them all out of it. But what you're referencing in terms of the changing of the game plan is how they played no linebackers, which is... It sounds radical when you say they didn't play any linebackers, but in the league today, it's not really that radical, because linebackers now are what? Smaller, faster, better in space than any linebackers ever before.
But wasn't this the year where the linebackers made a comeback? But
why did they?
Van Der Esch, isn't he a linebacker?
Why is he good?
I don't know.
He plays in space. He's really good in space. There's not a huge difference between Derwin James and CJ Mosley. CJ Mosley is the Ravens' inside linebacker who covers as much space as possible. Derwin James is someone who can play anywhere in the field. He's a bigger safety, but he's a great athlete. So what they did was they took part of this now is also they had injuries, so it's not just simple strategy. It was, we took our best athletes, put those guys at linebacker. They had the speed to contain Jackson. They had the speed to shoot the gaps when they were running these option plays, so they could get into the backfield and tackle them before they got going. And it worked out perfectly. Had it backfired on them, we'd probably be all calling them crazy for what they did. But I think we're kind of looking too much at the individual game to kind of prorate it out to being this bigger theory about how Jackson is going to struggle the second time around.
Yeah, well, it's not so much that it's just Jackson struggling the second time around. The point you make about there being tape on and then from the other games. I wonder how busy you are the week of a match. Like, do you have time to watch the tape from everybody else? Or do you only do Jackson the week you're doing him?
But even if you're doing that, you have that week. Is that much of a difference from the week of the playoff week?
Well, why didn't they do it the first time?
Well, Jackson played very well in the first time. He was great passing the ball in their first game. Like, they contained Jackson as a runner in the first game.
But they didn't play the 3 safeties.
Oh, no, they didn't. That was obviously a change, but that was also partly injuries, like I mentioned. And it's also, you do different things in the playoffs because you're holding back a little bit sometimes in the regular season. At that point of the year, they were pretty much guaranteed the playoff spot.
Yeah.
It wasn't dead certain, but it was like 2 weeks ago, so they knew they knew that they had a chance at a bye. They also knew they were probably going to be playing on the wildcard weekend.
Yeah.
But they are just these changes you make as a coach. I don't think it's necessarily a binary thing or a linear thing where they didn't do it the first time, they did it the second time, so they learned from the first time. I think the biggest change really was that passing game for the Ravens. Jackson in the first game showed off phenomenal pocket movement and he got better pass protection than he got this time. The one thing that was a big difference as well that didn't really get as much talk was how Joey Bosa played. Joey Bosa was fully focused on the run to start. He knew they were going to run the ball. Last game, Joey Bosa wanted to get it to passer because that's what Joey Bosa wants to do. He's a defensive end. That's a normal thing for them. So if you want to talk about that adjustment from an individual player point of view, I would put more into that than the overall strategy.
Also, talk to us about Melvin Ingram and why he is able to play so well in this game. Like, when we've been talking traditionally about the pass rush with that team, it's always been focused on Joey Bosa. Why did Melvin Ingram not get as much play up to this point, and is he a better player than Joey Bosa? What's the story?
Well, it's kind of like when 10 years ago, like the best defense I can remember from recent times, from modern times, prior to this Bears. This is a conversation we had this year because of the Bears, because of the Ravens, because of how good they were, and because of the Cowboys now as well. They're sparkling as well. But about 10 years ago, you had James Harrison, Defensive Player of the Year, got all the focus for the Steelers, big star, superstar player. And then you had Lamar Woodley on the other side, Lamar Woodley in his prime. And Lamar Woodley was like, not James Harrison. It was like, James Harrison's here, Lamar Woodley's right there, right behind him. So you're never going to get it talked about when you're right behind the star in your team. And that's Melvin Ingram. He's phenomenal. He's an outstanding. He's the number one pass rusher for most teams in the league. He's a star for most teams. He's a star for the Chargers too. We just don't talk about him that much. The thing with Ingram that's interesting is, during the draft time, and this is a big thing for anyone who's watching who's got drafts, who's switched their focus to the draft at this point, which a lot of people have, yeah. During draft time, you're going to hear about arm length, you're going to hear about height, you're going to hear about all these different things. Aaron Donald is going to win the MVP or the Defensive Player of the Year this year. He was too short at draft time. Melvin Ingram had too short arms. And it was like, the idea there is he can't hold blockers off him, off his body. Doesn't really matter, because when you move as fast as he does, when you're as balanced as he is, when you can just knock guys over, his spin move for one of his sacks on James Hurst again, who got benched midway through the game because of Melvin Ingram alone, his ability to get around the edge of Ronnie Stanley, to get that leverage underneath him and then power through him and force Stanley to tackle him from behind, that took away that big scramble in that game. Those talents it doesn't matter how long your arms are. When you are that good and that effective, that's unbelievable, and that makes you a game changer. Is he better than Bosa? No. But that's because Bosa is so good. It's not because Ingram is this flash in the pan. Ingram's a high-quality, all-pro level player.
So this is a team built to stick around. This is a team who, if they had a kicker the last 3 or 4 years, would probably have been at least in a championship game and maybe in a Super Bowl. Who knows, right?
I feel like you're being nice to me, because we sat here prior to the season and you said this is a team that's built, and I just said, they're the Chargers. I don't trust them.
Yeah, and fair enough, but that's the whole point. Yeah. Except that with these two generational talents who come along to be in the same team, so Bosa's still on his rookie contract. I don't know what the deal with Melvin Ingram is he?
No, he's past his rookie contract.
Okay, so they probably have him on a sweetheart deal because he wasn't quite the superstar that he's become now. You can survive for a long period of time with the rest of your team being mediocre if you've got decent corners.
Well, the rest of the team isn't even mediocre. Well, you mentioned it, the corners part, but that's where I'm kind of going with this. Derwin James, who I've already mentioned, like, my big thing coming into this game was I don't know where Derwin James is going to play, because Derwin James is phenomenal. He can do everything, but he's at his best when you put him on a tight end and you shut down Travis Kelce. And Derwin James can do that. But against the Ravens, you're like, what are you going to do? Put him on Max Williams? Put him on Mark Andrews?
Put him on the run.
Yeah, and that's what they did. And I knew he could play the run. I did not know he could play it that well. I did not know they would actually use him that way. I thought they would keep him out a bit. But when you put Derwin James and Casey Hayward, who might be the best cornerback in football, like you're talking about Melvin Ingram being overlooked, Casey Hayward gets overlooked for guys like Marcus Peters, who's had a bad year. Yeah. Guy like Jalen Ramsey, who's had a bad year. Casey Hayward's consistent. Always finds the ball, always covers well. So if you put those two behind Ingram and Bosa, suddenly the ball has to come out quickly, and you've got cornerbacks in the backfield who can jump it and break passes up or intercept it. So, and it also helps the other guys. So when you're talking about the other guys in the team, yeah, they're average, mediocre, whatever way you want to put it. But they're elevated by playing with Bosa, Ingram, Hayward, James. And you can leverage your defense off of your stars.
I felt a little bit during that game that the offense weren't quite at the level they could have been. That there was just drops. No, the Chargers. That like they could have had that game salted away.
Oh yeah.
In the first 18 minutes.
What was it, 4 field goals they started off with?
And like
and short fields too, some of them.
Stuttery and just no sense of. I don't know if that was because Melvin Gordon had that knee injury that like looked like an ACL, and then he pops up and is like, he's okay again. It's a bit
even their touchdown, like it looked like it was going to go the other way.
Yeah.
Melvin Gordon dives into, and I'm still kind of not sure that was actually, because to me, like, he's diving in and he has the ball and he's cracking the plane, and I hate replay anyway, so I hate this idea of going back looking at a toe, because you see it in every game where the officials, the ball is marked as a 37 and the official just puts it at the 36 without even realising, and they just play on and no one says anything.
Yeah.
So like you're jumping a yard and then we're reviewing a toe. But when I watched that play, it looked like the ball was coming out. So even when they scored that touchdown, they still weren't fully there. The thing that would be the scary part for me right now, is I don't think Phillip Rivers' arm holds up this late into the year for him to carry the offense. So like you said, they need Melvin Gordon at 100%. They need him to be effective. But if you want to spin that forward right now, going to next week's matchup, Patriots defense, nothing like the Baltimore Ravens defense.
Yeah. Before we get to start previewing that game, the point you make about wrong spots, it looked to me in the very first game of the weekend, on their first or second drive, the Colts were short of a first down on third down. Andrew Luck completes a pass, and then it looked like forward momentum. Who was it? It was T.Y. T.Y. catches it, and he gets smashed, and he gets smashed back about 10 yards. And they just go, yeah, that's first down. I'm like, I'm challenging that. I'm just like, I know that you're not supposed to challenge in the first 2.5, 3 minutes because there's some mad, crazy bullshit rule about that. But like, challenge that. They didn't. Play goes on, touchdown, and that's the game over.
But the other ridiculous part of this is the reason coaches don't want to challenge spots of the ball, you might not have a camera angle. And it's something so ridiculously simple. Like, the college football game was on Monday night. On Monday night, they had 250 cameras on that game. So they could see everything.
Right.
A normal NFL game does not have 250 cameras. A normal playoff game doesn't have 250 cameras, even though it has more than a regular season game. So even if you challenge a spot, you might not get it. But this is kind of the other very American thing. Like, you see it in the NBA a lot more than in the NFL. They always say, in the final minute, the final 30 seconds, the refs have to swallow their whistles and not call fouls and let the players decide it, which is counterintuitive, because if you're not calling fouls, you're not letting the players decide it. And in the NFL, we kind of have the same thing, where the last 2 minutes, for whatever reason, matters more than the first quarter, and I think it's kind of crazy. And that's why we overlook when the ball's placed wrong. We overlook when a catch early in the game isn't actually a catch, and we just move on and we don't care about it. But when it happens at the end, it's the biggest story of the game.
Yeah, Andrew Luck was pretty good, right?
So my whole thing with Andrew Luck this year has been, early in the year, he wasn't 100%, but he was still pretty good. But prior to his shoulder injury, Andrew Luck was taking the step to, hey, see Drew Brees, I'm as good as him. See Tom Brady, I'm as good as him. Aaron Rodgers, I'm probably right behind him. So Andrew Luck was at that level, then he got hurt. Now Andrew Luck is back to that level, and he's reminding everyone, I can do everything. So the first drive of that game, and I knew as soon as I saw from the first drive of this game, I didn't know if they were going to win, but I knew that offense was going to comfortably move the ball, because on the first play, they get him to 3rd and 11. T.Y. Hilton, this might be the play you're talking about, actually, where he runs a deep curl against a very tight coverage. Hilton turns on his outside shoulder. Luck sees the coverage, puts the ball right on his inside shoulder, right here. So the defender pretty much has this covered because his arm's out here, and he has this outside shoulder covered because he's coming in like that. So Luck puts the ball on his inside shoulder, it's right there. Inside the structure, keeps the timing of the play, hits the play from the pocket, hits the pass in the pocket. Next third down, same drive, 3rd and 7, I believe it was. Hilton again, but this time it's outside the structure. This time they get pressure. And Luck feels the pressure. He breaks outside, holds the ball, waits for the perfect moment, hits T.Y. Hilton. And he was doing this all throughout the game, where he could see Clowney beating his lineman before he'd beaten his lineman. So he would just make the adjustment and move, and it looks like great pass protection. But what it really is Luck has seen this coming, and he's adjusted before he's forced into a position to adjust, which is impossible. It's what Aaron Rodgers has done for years, where you think you're winning and beating your offensive lineman, getting to this specific spot, and Luck has already changed the spot. So he had the Texans defense on the back foot all day long. Will he be able to do that against the Chiefs? I think so. But his receivers also dropped a bunch of passes this week.
Yeah.
You could get away with it against the Texans offense. we've all seen what Patrick Mahomes has done all year.
But
Can you get away against them?
Do they catch them next time, though? That's the thing. Do they get better as, like...
You've got Dontrell Inman, you've got Zach Pascal, T.Y. Hilton's playing with like a broken ankle, basically. Yeah. Like, you've got all these guys who... Like, Eric Ebron drops passes all the time. That's always been the knock on him. We're kind of overlooking it this year because he's had a lot of touchdowns, but he's still dropping passes. He dropped a touchdown in this game. They scored on the very next play. So, again, it's one of these things that didn't matter and got forgotten. I don't think they can keep pace with the Chiefs' offense like that. But, hey, one game sample, like we were talking about.
But their defense is also has got better and better and better as the season goes on. And what's the basis for their defense being good when the Colts were a laughingstock for the last 3 seasons?
I'll be honest with you, it's very hard for me to explain that season long. Like, we all just kind of point to the coach because it is a bunch of guys no one knows. Like, Marcus Hunt, for example, he's probably, well, outside of Malik Hooker, who's on the backfield, who was a high first-round pick from Alabama, Marcus Hunt is probably the biggest name we know, and we know him because he was a bust in Cincinnati, because they took this massive Estonian guy, I think he is, who was a freak athlete, and they tried to develop him, and they couldn't develop him. He was on Hard Knocks, actually, one year, and all the talk all the time was, oh, he doesn't have the mindset, doesn't have the attitude, he doesn't want to be violent, he's just kind of passive and walking around a gentle giant. And he leaves Cincinnati, and he travels around a couple of different places, and he winds up in Indianapolis this year, and he's outstanding. And suddenly he's playing with all this violence and power and expectations that he was supposed to have initially, and he's surpassed them all. So we kind of assume that's coaching. If you want to talk about this specific game, in this specific game, they recognise exactly what Deshaun Watson struggles with. Deshaun Watson is an exciting player, a guy who throws deep, has a mindset that I love, that it's, hey, I've got a short check down on third down, but I'm going to take the tighter coverage throw downfield because that's going to help me win the game. Love his mindset. What he doesn't have is patience in the pocket yet. And that's something that's normal for a young quarterback. So what you do against those quarterbacks is you rush 3 and you drop 1. And when you do that, and you saw it on the 4th and 1 where he forced the throw to DeAndre Hopkins on the slant behind Marcus Hunt, actually, who was in the passing lane. He had dropped out of the 4-man rush. Watson didn't recognise it because he got rid of the ball too quickly.
That's the interception.
No, this is the 4th down, 4th and 1. The interception, exactly the same thing, though. They have, it's playing cover 2, but they have only 3 rushing the passes, so they have an extra defender working underneath who's just watching Watson's eyes. Watson doesn't know he's there, throws the ball straight to him, runs underneath, catches it, and going the other way. And this is the issue that Watson needs to figure out and develop. He needs to have that patience. It's also a big reason why they've gotten sacked so often this year. He runs into sacks because he panics and he doesn't understand. He needs to hold the ball when the defense is doing certain things, get rid of it when they're doing other things.
If I was in charge of Houston, I would look at what's happened to the offensive line in Indianapolis and go, they spent a lot of money and resources and high draft picks on that, and he's getting really good protection. I understand the point about him running into sacks and stuff, but don't trade away your best lineman when you've got a young quarterback coming back from injury, and maybe spend some bloody money on it.
Well, I agree with your overall point here. But I do want to maybe not forgive them, but contextualise the left tackle trade of Dwayne Brown. Dwayne Brown, I don't think wanted to be there anymore. Dwayne Brown was not happy with their owner and his comments and all the stuff.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I can understand that.
So I understand that part for them. But yes, their offensive line needs to be better. The thing with the Colts is they've got Ryan Kelly at centre, first round pick from Alabama again. They're like Alabama players. Quentin Nelson, everyone knows at this point, which if everyone knows you as a left guard in your first year, you've either been awful or you've been phenomenal, and he hasn't been awful. So you've got that foundation there, and they've also got the young guy at right tackle who was our second round pick this year, who was also very, very good this year. So they've all been really good, but the scheme changes also helped them a lot there as well. I'm not sure Deshaun Watson is ready yet to go into quick passing, short and intermediate scheme. The big thing for me with that offense is not even the offensive line, it's get Will Fuller back healthy and you can run the same plays you've been running. Without him, you can't.
Yeah, I think there were 2 deep throws where it would have been Will Fuller making that diving catch that you see him make, and I think one of them would have gone for a touchdown, and there would have been massive shifts in the sense of, from that point when those passes get dropped, Indy are we're going to pressure.
It's kind of an interesting thing because Will Fuller back at Notre Dame, everyone loved Will Fuller. But the only thing Will Fuller couldn't do was catch the ball.
Right.
He had 9 drops in his last season in college, and they were all big, wide open drops. But the thing about it, besides what you're saying, which is absolutely right, he helps improve the individual contribution. He opens everything up. When you have a guy who can get downfield way faster than everyone else, it pulls the safety away, makes your reads easier. That's why DeAndre Hopkins comes wide open on crossing routes. And when Will Fuller's out of the offense, DeAndre Hopkins has to make these contested catches because he can't have that space.
I'd say you're pretty happy, not happy that you're out, but you're relatively happy with where you are if you're Houston at the moment. Assuming that JJ Watt comes down a little bit next year, assuming you can keep Clowney, you'll still have a really good attacking front. Add some stuff on the back end for your defense, and you will have everybody coming back as a wide receiver fit next year.
Yeah, I don't know if Demaryius Thomas is going to come back. He's also a free agent. Will Fuller, ACL, obviously, we've gotten used to people coming back from ACLs. I think they'll add someone on offense. I think the defense is set. They need to bring back Clowney, they need to bring back Matthew. Matthew's a free agent as well. He played pretty well this year. I was kind of...
He got blamed for the early touchdown, but it's like...
Yeah, look, it happens. You're a defensive back, it happens. But overall, his whole season as a whole has been pretty good.
Yeah.
And the play calling there, like they got out coached in this game, but that's going to happen against Frank Reich. He's a pretty good coach. So I think they'll be fine defensively. If I was them going into the offseason, I'd be looking at adding another wide receiver, so in case Fuller gets hurt, we look at Calvin Ridley in Atlanta. He's a third or fourth option, and they have him if someone goes down, and if someone doesn't go down, they've got a great offense.
Yeah.
And I also need an offensive lineman there. Yes, obviously. Running back, I really love Lamar Miller, but he's getting old. And they use him a lot this year. So I think they could really focus on the offense this year and help Watson through the early stages of his development. He's still we treat Deshaun Watson like he's old because he's thrown a lot of touchdowns.
Yeah.
He's played 24 games
maybe
in the NFL.
Less, yeah.
So he's still got a long way to go, and there's no reason to be overly down on him. There's no reason to be overly optimistic with him. Just build around him and help him grow.
Yeah, okay, so let's talk a little bit about the New England Patriots, obviously, who are up against the Los Angeles Chargers. Actually, we'll run you through the fixtures and the results so just everybody has a fairly clear idea of what's happening. So the results from last weekend, we've talked about most of these. The Chargers beat the Ravens 23-17. We haven't talked about the Eagles and the Bears, but we'll get to the Eagles in a minute. And the Cowboys beat the Seahawks 24-22. With kicker controversy. That's what happened to leave a 600-year-old kicker at the Seahawks. The Colts beat the Texans 21-17. So the games this week, the Chiefs at the Colts. Is that right? No, that's not right.
No, the Colts at the Chiefs.
Yeah. So these are fixtures from Google. So it's Rams, Cowboys at Rams, Eagles at Saints, and Chargers at Patriots.
I love that you're giving out that they're not in the American version. They're in the version we use. It's home versus away.
We don't use we don't in the NFL, right?
Where are we? We're in Ireland. Come on.
Yeah, but we're not anyway. The Patriots have been one of the worst good teams that we've seen, or one of the worst winning teams that we've seen, according to everybody. But I'm just not ready to.
Yeah.
I'm just not ready to go. Oh yeah. What's going to happen here is they'll get outplayed, and by a team flying east again from the West Coast for the third week in a row, and Belichick's just going to be like, that's fine. It's just the end of the Brady era anyway.
Plus, we've all done this already, haven't we? A couple of times. We've already written them off a few times. Now, they have been beaten at home in the playoffs before. The Ravens came in, I think it was Joe Flacco's second year maybe, and Ray Rice had that opening long touchdown. And that's kind of the way this game needs to go if the Chargers are going to win it, which is a crazy thing to say because the Chargers on paper are better pretty much everywhere. You can argue Rivers and Brady at this point because Brady's had a down year. Wide receiver, they've got Keenan Allen, they've got Mike Williams, they've got Travis Benjamin. Travis Benjamin would probably be the best receiver in the Patriots right now. He's the third best on the Chargers. Defensively, they've got great pass rushers, they've got good linebacker. Well, they've got safeties who can play linebacker, I guess. And that might be something to do again this week for a different reason. But because you get all that speed on the field against that short passing game, even though it's not against the run, that could work again. But Chargers very clearly the better team on paper. But like you, I struggle to be confident against Belichick. It's Belichick. I compared it to, on our podcast this week, I compared it to playing against LeBron and the Cavaliers. You always felt like that team wasn't that good, but they had LeBron. And when I say they have LeBron, I don't mean Brady, I mean Belichick. Belichick is going to set everyone up perfectly and make it very, very difficult on you. And like you said, they've got to travel back again.
Yeah.
Even if you don't think the flights matter, it's time. It's time taken away from your preparation. It's disruption from your schedule, from your preparation leading up to the game. So, Chargers, if you told me this is a neutral field, you get all the preparations equal, everyone's healthy, everyone's good, everyone's happy, everyone's in form, Chargers very clearly a better team. Yeah,
if it was a Super Bowl, if this was a Super Bowl and it wasn't in Boston and they had 2 weeks build-up, no problems. But just the circumstances this week, you feel pretty bad about. What about Dallas? Where are Dallas right now?
It's the toughest question you can ask me because I love that team and I hate that coaching staff. The coaching staff just this. Okay, so two of the biggest plays in this last game against the Seahawks were, you probably don't even need me to tell you. You probably know exactly what they are off the top of your head. Dak Prescott the quarterback designed run on 3rd and 14, where he gets into the first down that sets up the game-winning score, the touchdown, or the end of the game, whatever way you want to put it. And then he has that sweep that sets up Ezekiel Elliott's short touchdown, where it's a designed run again for the quarterback, and Elliott gets out in front of him and gets an outstanding block for a running back who's used to carrying the ball. He did that at Ohio State. He's really, really good at it. He cut KJ right down, got him at the ankle, flipped him over and landed him on his face. Beautiful block. But those are the two biggest plays of the game to me because they don't do it enough. When they do it, it's brilliant. Dak involved in the running game, Dak carrying the ball helps open up the whole offense, but they just don't do it. I don't know why, I don't understand it, because I don't understand anything that coaching staff does.
Is it possible that they fluke their way into uncovering and realising that is exactly what they're supposed to do, and that's the team who's getting hot, that actually they're built perfectly for a run the way you're supposed to be built these days?
You sound like me for the last 16 weeks. I've been talking myself into this team over and over again, and it's simply because the talent on the team is so good, but the coaching staff, they love these stop routes, these short routes. Amari Cooper had that thing when he had that big game a couple of weeks ago when he was saying, we keep running stop routes and I can get wide open if you just let me run the deeper routes. And they had the audible, and it was an indictment on Scotland and the offensive coordinator because they were calling better plays than the coordinator who's paid to call plays.
Right.
But the other part of this is they always have these short outbreaking routes that gain 3 or 4 yards and force you to...
Was that mic'd up? I didn't see it.
The Amari Cooper?
Yeah.
No, it was actually reported afterwards. And the thing about the interesting part of this is Cooper just came out and said it.
Right.
That's not really something you should do. Generally, players, you can't call out your coach that way. He didn't call him out directly, but by what he was saying that happened, the way he explained it, you're pointing out that your coach has no idea what he's doing.
Yeah.
But the thing that makes me excited about the team is less about this offense. Even if the offense stays problematic the way it's been, defensively, that team is phenomenal. Everyone's talking about Brian Schottenheimer and his play calling and how, they ran the ball, or they threw the ball 27 times. Their average for the year was 26.6. So that was their normal game plan. But they were scared to open up the passing game, and they were scared because you've got DeMarcus Lawrence on one side and you've got Randy Gregory on the other side. We talked about Bosa and Ingram. This is Bosa and Ingram 2.0, except these two players are probably flat level. One's not slightly better than the other.
Right.
If you were going to argue one, you'd argue DeMarcus Lawrence. Then you've got those linebackers in the back I was talking about earlier. Cover space, cover any time of matchup, anyone you want. Byron Jones, the cornerback's had a great year. The safeties are effective as well. So the reason I'm excited about this team, it's the defense with Chris Richard, who is, again, if you're looking for a new head coach, he's one of the guys who's being talked about. I would be very excited. Look, we can't predict these coaches. We are excited about guys and then they're terrible, and we're down on guys and they turn out to be great. We never have any idea. But if you look at just what Chris Richard has done throughout his career, everywhere he's been, he's made things better. So I'd be excited about him. Defensively is why I'm excited about this team and why I think they have a chance to actually go further than just this next round.
So you think they can beat the Rams?
I think they do.
That whole point about the team not having a bye, not making it any further than this round, basically, or maybe they made it to the championship games. Yeah, but whatever. It's it doesn't seem that important when you consider last year the Rams rested their team effectively for week 17, got blown out, and then came up the next week and laid an egg. So it's
the Cowboys had the option to in week 17, they just didn't.
Yeah, and in retrospect, I think that's all worked out fine for them.
It's worked out, but I'm not sure we can point to anything specific from that game.
No, I don't think it's cause and effect either.
Yeah.
But the Rams, I'm just wondering about hot. That defense is going to be amazing. Oh, it's going to be amazing. And then actually, it's not really that good at all. What's the truth about them?
Well, the bigger concern there is the offense has faltered towards the end of the year as well. I think when you mentioned the bye week and how important that is, I generally, like you, I kind of don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing for teams, but I always will say it's a good thing when you need time to get healthy. And Andrew Whitworth got hurt in the final game of the year. Todd Gurley's been hurt for a while. Those guys needed a break. So getting them and seeing how healthy they're going to be is going to be a huge part of this game. Because if Whitworth is healthy, that helps you with the rest of the offensive line. It doesn't just help you shut down Randy Gregory at right defensive end. It helps you give help towards DeMarcus Lawrence. And that allows you to open your playbook up a little bit. If Gurley's healthy, it's Todd Gurley. If he's 80% Todd Gurley, he's still a good player. But if he's 100% Todd Gurley, you're terrified. You're scared of what he's going to do every time he gets the ball. Yeah. And that changes your game plan and your approach. I think the interesting part actually as well on the other side of this is the Rams defense, while you're right in saying it hasn't been very good, they match up well to this Cowboys running game and this Cowboys offense. You've got Ndamukong Suh there. Suh, whatever you want to say about him, he's a big body that's hard to move. Aaron Donald there is going to blow everything up like Aaron Donald does. That's why he's going to be Defensive Player of the Year. You've got a front seven and Wade Phillips, who is familiar with the Cowboys because he's been there before.
Yeah, okay, you're talking me into them.
I mean, I've been pretty much the biggest Cowboys optimist this year and the biggest Rams pessimist. So This is the matchup made for me, to be wrong.
Yeah, so that one kicks off at 1:15 on Sunday morning. That's the late game Saturday night. The Sunday games are the Patriots at the Chargers, and the final game we're going to talk about briefly here is Saints against the Eagles. The Saints are something like 8 or 9 point favourites for this.
Seems low.
Do you think so?
Do you remember the score the last time they went into New Orleans?
But wasn't that Carson Wentz playing?
It was. But like, do you remember what Nick Foles did? Does anyone pay attention to what Nick Foles did at the weekend? His offense scored 16 points. He had 2 interceptions, and he was awful on that final drive. Except there's a sequence on that final drive where Foles walks himself into pressure and has to throw the ball away when he's got a receiver wide open deep downfield. And then the next play, he forces a check down to Nelson Aguilar. Aguilar makes 2 guys miss and gets open. Then Doug Peterson on third down designs this beautiful play where fake screen left, fake screen right, throw to the tight end up the middle, comes wide open for the first down. And they just carried Foles. So he got into the position to score, and he scored a touchdown at the end. But let's not forget the rest of that game. He was not good in that game.
I see the point you're making, and I raised you last year's game round this week against the Falcons, where he should have thrown them out of the competition. So it's possible he gets a little bit hotter. But the Saints aren't the Saints anymore. The Saints aren't the same team that were blowing teams out either. They were scraping 12-9s and 12-10s.
I've already been burned once by believing in this mythical idea that the Chargers are just bad because they're the Chargers. But I also have this mythical idea where the Saints are just the Saints at home, and they're always going to be terrifying at home. And they've had that bye. I think the bye matters for them because Sean Payton, he's just going to get his timing down, get his timing for his offense down. Everything's going to be... They sat out week 17, having Kamara didn't play. Teddy Bridgewater started for Drew Brees. I think the Saints are just a far superior team to this Eagles team.
So it's a blowout?
It's still... the Eagles defense, Michael Bennett was outstanding this week. The defensive front is really good. But I think Mitch Trubisky is very, very inconsistent, and he's not going to take advantage of all the opportunities the secondary gives you. Drew Brees is what? For his career, all he's ever been is consistent. He's going to be able to target Avonte Maddox. Michael Thomas is going to run away from Avonte Maddox all game, and the only way this game is close to me is if the Saints don't turn up.
So you think this is a ludicrous conversation that people are having about Wentz versus
no. But I also don't think Wentz is that good. So I'm just a hater. I think that's pretty much the way we're going to settle on it.
If you're Harry Roseman, who are you picking? You're picking Wentz, right?
Well, I'm picking Wentz for the simple reason that he's cheaper. I don't think Wentz... Here, the fascinating thing to me is less Wentz versus Foles. It's Wentz versus Dak, because they get compared to each other because they're the same draft class and they're in the same division. Dak has better individual performances in games over his career. His stats are all better. Dak doesn't have a torn ACL. He doesn't have a bad back, and he doesn't have a bad shoulder or bad elbow. And we're all sold on Carson Wentz, and we're all questioning Dak, and I don't understand this.
There's a lot of Dak haters. Yeah.
If you lay it out, the facts out, one guy looks good and one guy looks bad. Look, if you want to talk yourself into Nick Foles, that's fine. But you saw what Nick Foles looked like at the start of the season. You saw what Nick Foles has looked like at the Rams. You saw what Nick Foles has looked like in his previous life with the Eagles. You saw him in that one game with the Chiefs where he was terrible. Most of his career has been bad. It's he is hit at the right time, obviously, and he's going to get paid a lot of money, and all credit to him for that. But let's not be getting crazy with him.
Who's in the conference championship games?
The Saints, obviously. I think I'm going to go with the Cowboys, which would be a fascinating matchup because the Cowboys beat the Saints even though it was in Dallas.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go with the Chargers and the Chiefs, and that's also going to be really fascinating. The Chiefs are in this weird position where they might very clearly be the best team in football, but no matter who wins that other game, they're playing a team who's already beaten them this year. And the Chargers have beaten them in Arrowhead.
Yeah.
Of that phenomenal game where Mike Williams caught the 2-point conversion at the end.
Yeah, that's going to be good.
It's a good weekend.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 matches left for the entire season, and not a dud amongst them at the moment.
You're overlooking the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, 7 matches left, as I said. Cian, good stuff. Enjoy your trip to LA and bring back some of that sunshine for us.
I mean, if the Rams lose now, I'll be just wrecking everyone.
Well, if the Rams and the Chargers both go out this weekend, are you there for...
No one cares about the Chargers, though. You know that? I don't know why. Why would you not care about the Chargers? You've got Phillip Rivers. You've got all that young talent. It seems like a fun team.
If they win, I suspect people will start caring about them. I think that because
and
LA...
if the Rams lose as well.
LA had that at least some tradition of being there for a little while.
Eric Dickerson.
That would help. That would help. But, fickle NFL fans will happily weigh in behind the LA Chargers.
Oh, it's going to be good. I'm glad we've got high-quality teams and high-quality matchups, because sometimes, even at this stage of the season, you can still have teams that you don't really... last year we had the Titans at the stage of the year.
Yeah.
They weren't good.
Yeah, that was rubbish.
We knew they weren't good.
Cian, good stuff. Thanks very much. All right, let's go to Cincinnati in the throbbing nerve centre of PFF and join Sam Monson. Sam, how are you?
Doing good, Ger. How about you?
Yeah, I'm very well.
Nerve center.
Yeah.
Sure, I like the sound of that.
Your dark lair.
Yeah. These are we're in the conference room here, so we've got some fine sound deadening panels on the wall. It's not quite as fancy as the studio.
You've been involved in many angry spats over the course of the last week, in particular about Lamar Jackson on your Twitter feed. It's been very entertaining.
That's pretty much what I do these days. It's piss people off on Twitter and then spend the rest of my life dealing with it.
Yeah, so let's deal with this Lamar issue. I mean, he proved you 100% right for like 56 minutes of last weekend's game.
Yeah, which was, probably long enough. I mean, they weren't able to dig themselves out of that hole. I do think that the last quarter or the last sort of few minutes of that game were pretty big for the Ravens and Lamar Jackson going forward, because if they'd had to roll into the offseason with the first team that's taken a second look at this offense, completely shutting it down and completely shutting down Lamar Jackson with no visible evidence that he could pass the ball efficiently at all, this would be a really rough offseason for them, having to answer questions for the next 9 months about whether this guy can actually get it done as a quarterback, as opposed to just a running threat. At least the fact that he showed towards the end of the game that he's capable of doing something lets them point to that. They can say, look, it's a process. He's developing. He's improving that part of the game. Just look at the end of the game. But if there was nothing, this would have been really tough for them.
The point that you were making, which was relatively subtle and therefore was obviously lost on Twitter, was that he can be good, but part of that, the fact that he's playing well at the moment, is to do with the fact that teams haven't really seen him just yet.
Yeah, look, Lamar Jackson is at the extreme end of this spectrum of athletic quarterbacks that have been suboptimal passers of the football. So, one end of the scale, you've got guys like Peyton Manning, who never left the pocket. There was a season where Peyton Manning had a scramble rate of 0. He literally didn't scramble all season long, not once. And then the other end of the scale, you've got guys that scramble quite a lot because they're athletic, and typically that goes hand in hand with being some kind of suboptimal passer. You don't tend to get players that scramble a lot and can be really, really good top-level passers, because typically there's no reason to scramble if you're a good enough passer. But there's some kind of crossover. So, Lamar Jackson is this incredibly athletic quarterback. He's an incredibly effective ball carrier. He's a really good runner. The only caveat to that is that he's fumbled the ball quite a lot this year. But I was basically making the point that at the moment he's not a good enough passer to get by with just that alone. And if a team figures out how to stop this running threat that he's posing, either he's going to need to show something else, or they're going to be in trouble. And so far, they hadn't played anybody that's seen it twice. Obviously in 2019, they're going to be playing a whole bunch of teams that's had a chance to see it, or has had the entire offseason to figure out what to do with it. But the Chargers were the first team that had seen it for a second time, and they had a clear and defined plan to take away the running threat and force him to beat them as a passing quarterback. And as much as he's capable of making spectacular throws, he's a fundamentally pretty inaccurate quarterback who is probably going to struggle with that part of his game. And if that doesn't develop, they either need to evolve the kind of overall running threat in the offense, or he's going to have issues.
How do you evolve accuracy at this point of a quarterback's career? Now, remember, I think he's just turned 22, or he's still 21, so unbelievably young. And you would hope that it's very possible to learn new skills even at that age. So what can they actually do in this offseason and over the next 2 to 3 years to make sure that his accuracy reaches a base level which is acceptable?
Yeah, it's all about working on fundamentals and technique, and bringing in a kind of specific quarterback mechanics coach. We've got a guy at PFF called Zach Robinson, who was a former NFL and college quarterback himself. He trains a lot of these quarterbacks before the draft in exactly this kind of thing. Fine-tunes their mechanics, make sure that footwork is always in point. We sit around the office and we just toss around the football, and even from 6 feet away, throwing one of those tiny red little rubber balls, it always comes out of Zach's hand with this perfect spiral, exactly the way it should. He just knows exactly what to do with the ball in his hand to make that happen. And Lamar in particular, I don't know if anybody has ever gone down to that minute detail with him and taught him exactly how to throw a ball. He's capable of these spectacular plays. And what makes him really interesting versus a guy like Tim Tebow, for example, is that Lamar Jackson does things that Tebow never did. He's able to work through his progression consistently. He's able to find the right guy, identify where the ball should go, and it's just accuracy that lets him down. And sometimes the ball comes out of his hand in a way that you think it shouldn't be coming out like that as an NFL passer who has presumably been taught all these fundamentals at some point. I don't know if he ever has been, and maybe he just needs an offseason working with a guy like Zach or, an equivalent quarterback coach to fine-tune that stuff.
Let's talk about a couple of quarterbacks who we haven't seen in the playoffs just yet. Let's start with Patrick Mahomes. What is it that we've seen from Mahomes so far that suggests his game is going to hold up under the pressure of the playoffs, the occasion, the event, the timing of this? So football now in January is something that obviously he hasn't seen before as a player. Why is everybody so confident that he's actually just going to be able to breeze through this?
I mean, I guess because he's spent the entire season already doing things that you shouldn't be able to do. This is the third guy to ever throw 50 touchdown passes in a season. The other two are Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, and he did it in year 2, or, essentially his first year starting. So that's already pretty spectacular. He threw for 5,000 yards. Again, that's a pretty elite group of people, albeit one getting larger by the year. And not just that, but the way he was doing it. The stuff he's been doing all season long has been insane.
So, notwithstanding everything you've just said about how amazing Mahomes has been over the course of the season, this week we get the opportunity to see the original iteration of what Patrick Mahomes was before his injury. Andrew Luck is the superstar quarterback that everybody says is going to be an era-defining talent, who just disappeared for a couple of reasons for a couple of seasons, for numerous reasons, mainly the injury, essentially for 2 full seasons. So a lot of people are kind of remembering how amazing Andrew Luck was by the quality of the performances that he's put in since that team looked like they were toasted when they lost 5 of the first 6 games of the season.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that he's finally in a scheme that's actually helping him as opposed to relying on him. The Colts' game plan for the first few years of his career was basically, Andrew Luck is so good, he'll be able to bail us out of whatever we do. So let's just run a bunch of 7-step drops, so some long developing concepts, and Luck will find an open guy at some point if you give him enough time. And consequently, they had an offensive line that wasn't great, so Luck was constantly getting hit. The receivers weren't necessarily fantastic, but it was all on Luck's shoulders. For the first time, we've got this Frank Reich offense, and the real calling card of this system has been the ball is coming out of Luck's hands way quicker than it ever has before. They're scheming guys open quickly, and they're actually helping him with the system. And, if Luck was able to get this all done by himself, essentially, when you help him the way some other quarterbacks are helped by their offensive scheme, he looks even better. So this is his best PFF grade of his career. It's way higher than most of his kind of career baseline, and even higher than that one great season he had where he finally kind of justified it. But the ball is coming out of his hands so much faster this year than it ever has in the past, like 0.3 of a second on average per snap, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you kind of put it in a ranking hierarchical list, that's jumping from like middle of the pack to one of the fastest quarterbacks in the NFL. It's dramatically cutting down the amount of opportunity pass rushers have to get to him, and it's making everything in that Colts offense look so much better.
Yeah, I mean, it also really seems to suggest that the previous regime were just not doing their job properly when they had this amazing asset, that they refused to protect him, that they put him in the way of danger, and lo and behold, he had an injury that eventually saw the previous regime all get fired.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a temptation when you have an incredible talent to, realize that you have an incredible talent and essentially just lean on them at the expense of everything else. It's like, this guy is so good that he'll be able, why would we not want him to be the orchestrator of everything good that's happening? So you load him up, and basically put all of the pressure on his shoulders. And it's not necessarily a terrible plan. It's just that it kind of makes that very difficult because everything is on that guy. If you can then take a guy, accept that he's one of the best players in the league, but try and help him out, try and make his life as easy as possible, everything ends up being better, even though you're leaning more on essentially lesser talented players. And we've seen a similar kind of thing in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, that because he's Aaron Rodgers, the temptation is to just make it all about him. But with all of these players, whether it's Rodgers, Brady, Breeze, Peyton Manning, they're better when you take the load off them and let them just be kind of the most important cog in the machine as opposed to the entire machine.
Yeah, and you can be clutch when we need you, but in the meantime, let's just keep the powder dry and make sure that you're actually fit at the end of the season when these games start getting really big. So the other QB who we haven't actually seen just yet is Drew Brees. There's a sense that this Saints team are by far the best team left in the entire competition. They're the ones who have rolled into this part of the season largely unimpeded by significant injuries, and yet I can't scratch the feeling that we haven't seen them play as a team in just a little while, and that its form is such a illusory thing, particularly in the NFL, that like I need to see it from them, certainly in the first quarter, the first half even, before I'm going to fully believe that they're just going to roll through these playoffs the way they did the best part of the regular season.
Yeah, I don't know if they're by far the best team left in there. I think I've said it all the way through the season that the NFC generally is a really tough conference this year. There's a lot of good teams in it. And as much as the Saints have been probably the best, and playing at home for them in the playoffs, I think is big. In the Superdome in New Orleans, they're a very different team. They're capable of winning on the road, but they're really tough to overcome at home. So they're good across the board. We've got this, as long as Sean Payton and Drew Brees are there, their passing offense is always going to be good. They have, I think, a better set of receiving weapons than Drew Brees has had for a long time, even though he's been throwing the ball to a lot of kind of undrafted nobodies throughout the season. He's also got Michael Thomas, who is the favorite target he has had in his career. When you look in terms of market share and how much he's throwing the ball to a specific guy, he's never thrown the ball to anybody more than he's thrown the ball to Michael Thomas, and he's probably the best receiver he's ever had. Plus, you've got guys like Alvin Kamara coming out of the backfield, and you have this fantastic offensive line that is aided by, again, the ball coming out quickly. So the offense is really good, and the defense, it looked really good on paper heading into the year, and it just took a while to get going. Guys like Marshawn Lattimore at cornerback had a real sort of slow start to the season, but started to get cooking as the year went on. And now that defense is starting to hold up its own and actually match the offense in terms of output. So I think it is, a really good team, and they're playing at home, which is huge. But it's a tough matchup in the NFC because they all are.
Yeah, sticking with the NFC for the Dallas Rams game, for the this is again a situation where I'm not quite sure what to make of the Rams, particularly because of what happened in the postseason last year, when they just seemed not quite ready for it, or a little bit undercooked, or something just wasn't quite right when it got to this point of the season. Now, they're a year older. It's another year in the Sean McVay system. They've definitely added some weapons on defense who just haven't quite clicked as a unit just yet. But what's the truth about where they are at the moment?
I think the big concern for them is that, they've shown they can be the best team in the NFL this season, but as the year went on and teams started to understand what you need to do to combat this offense, they were really slow to adjust. And that is a concern for a team. It's kind of the same story as the Ravens, that as soon as the team figured out what they were doing and took that away, you need to have a plan B, and you need to be pretty quick at going to plan B if plan A isn't going to work. And teams started to figure that out with the Rams. They understood what the Rams were trying to do with that offense, and they took away the passes they wanted to make, and they basically said, right, figure out another way to beat us. And in particular, they were basically gifting the Rams the running game. They were bailing on heavy stacked fronts up front. They were playing coverage completely. They were trying to take away the passes that the Rams wanted to do, and the obvious adjustment would be to run heavy, load up Todd Gurley, and really pound on teams until they adjust back and you can get your passing game back on track. But they never really did that, and those were the games they struggled in, those low-scoring games against the Bears, albeit against a really good defense. But there were some other games in there that they did struggle to have the same kind of offensive output, and it's really because they haven't shown yet that they have this solid plan B. So Dallas's defense is the best part of that team. If Dallas's defense comes to play with that same kind of game plan, the Rams need to have figured out what their alternative is.
Yeah,
this is the worst possible matchup, really, for the Rams in terms of the style of play, the quality of players that Dallas has. I mean, if the Rams were playing Nick Foles, you'd feel pretty confident if you were a Rams fan. And they probably would back themselves in a bit of a shootout against the Saints. But Dallas just presents this immovable object.
Well, I think both Dallas and Philadelphia would pose a defense that can cause them real problems. And again, I think the biggest thing is the scheme. If they come with the right game plan, both those defenses are well capable of slowing down this Rams offense, which again, the onus comes back on them to figure out if they've got the reverse game plan. The interesting thing with Dallas is what kind of offense are they going to put out? Because away from home, they're not quite the same team, and we're going to have to rely on Dak Prescott again at times. And as much as he has shown he's got the ability to make those big plays when most counts, this past weekend, he was the guy that stepped up and made the key scramble, made a couple of big plays down the stretch. He needs to do that consistently. There was no better example of the kind of inconsistent quarterback that Dak Prescott can be than just before they threw the touchdown to Michael Gallup on the fade route. He missed the exact same fade to Michael Gallup. And it was almost like that was so bad we have to take a second shot at it because it's definitely there. But, he needs to make those plays the first time around when he gets the opportunity. If single coverage on the outside, it's one-on-one. Those are the plays the quarterbacks want to have. You have to hit them. You can't put the ball 3 yards out of bounds, which is where that first one went.
Yeah. So you don't think he's going to do that this weekend enough to be able to beat LA?
Yeah, I have a lot of concerns about Dallas on the road. I think the defense will probably do a good job of slowing down the Rams' passing attack, but I just don't have the confidence on Dak Prescott being enough to overcome this. Our analytics guys, the PFF forecast guys, we call them, they were saying that the big story coming out of Wildcard Weekend is that always go with the better quarterback. Whether it's just enough to overcome the betting line and make sure that the underdog teams will cover the spread, or whether it's enough to actually win you the game, always lean with the better quarterback. And I think even though Jared Goff has had those hiccups down the stretch, he's probably still a better quarterback than Dak Prescott.
Is he? Okay, that's you've definitely reached that conclusion at this point. Is that, I would have said it was pretty close.
I think Goff can do more things in the passing game. Dak Prescott's big strength is what he can do as a runner. And I don't know that they use him enough in that area to kind of overcome his deficiencies as a passer. Again, he's the guy that can do good things, can make spectacular throws, just doesn't do them often enough. When people kind of analyze quarterback play and they pull out single plays, and it's every one of these guys in the NFL can do something special. That's why they've made it as far as the NFL. The question is not can they do it or not. The question is how often do they do it, and what happens between the plays where they're doing it. And the difference between guys like Dak Prescott and even a Russell Wilson, who is I think a significantly better quarterback, is Wilson just does it far more often than Prescott does, and there's less mistakes between the big plays.
Yeah, and they covered obviously last week even if they didn't win Seattle. One last question for you then: is this the end of the Nick Foles magic train? This is no, surely you can't do it this week.
I don't know what to make of Nick Foles anymore. We said all along that he's one of the most volatile quarterbacks out there, and any given week you could get one of the best players in the NFL, you could get one of the worst players in the NFL, and I don't know if there's any way of predicting which one you're going to get. And yet, ironically, his grades at PFF through his starting time coming back in this year have almost been identical. Every single one of them has been high 70s. But those games last year in the NFC Championship game and the Super Bowl were mid-90s. So as good as he's been and as much as he's been a big part of them keeping this thing rolling, he hasn't got anywhere near as well as he played a year ago. So we're still in this situation where there's a lot better that Nick Foles could play, but then there's also a lot worse that he could play. So I have no earthly idea what kind of Nick Foles we're going to see this week, but it's probably going to be the thing that determines whether they've got any shot in that game.
Do you have your I told you so Tom Brady tweet ready to go, or are you saving that for another week? Are they going to beat the Chargers this weekend?
Can I really pull it out as a victory, 5 years later? At some point, Father Time's going to kick his ass, right? It just wasn't in 2014.
Yeah, well, you were to know that he had the Guerrero dude in the background, sticking them together with glue.
And all that avocado and water.
Who knew it had such amazing properties? I'm refusing to believe that Bill Belichick doesn't have a plan up his sleeve to beat the Chargers, who are travelling to the East Coast for the third successive week in a row.
Yeah, and the Chargers' biggest problem is their offensive line. I mean, even last week, that Ravens game kind of went the same way as it did the first time round, except the Ravens or the Chargers had an answer for that Lamar Ravens attack, but their offensive line was still a sieve. Phillip Rivers was still under pressure almost 50% of his snaps. He did slightly better under pressure than he did the first time round, but they're in that realm of he's under pressure so much that you basically can't win. You know, if you're over 45% as a quarterback under pressure, it is so hard to win games in that situation, and that's basically the situation he faces every single week. The Patriots don't get as much pressure as some other teams, but I think they'll dial up enough so that Rivers is going to have real problems. And unless the Chargers defense has another game like they just had, I just don't see how they can stop that Patriots attack enough that they'll be in the game.
All right, Sam, have a great weekend. Thanks a million for joining us.
You too. Take it easy.
It's Sam Monson on the line from Cincinnati, where PFF are headquartered. Ronan Mullen makes his debut on the NFL podcast. How are you?
Jared, thanks for having me.
You're a Ravens fan, so you have our sympathies.
Yeah, it was a tough watch now, and I think, as John Giles has wanted to say about Liverpool, the Ravens have one trick. It's a very good trick, but once you sort of nullify that, there isn't much going on. That's not to say they can't develop this. Lamar Jackson was sort of parachuted in mid-season to save the day, and he did very much that.
And John Harbaugh's job.
Yeah.
And that didn't make any sense, did it? That they were going to get rid of Harbaugh when everybody else wants him?
No, and Harbaugh seems to be on the table for trades. Whether he's trying to leverage for a new contract, I'm not sure, but very much so. If Joe Flacco had played out that season, you're looking at a losing record, more than likely maybe 500, but Lamar Jackson should have gone 7-0. He had the Kansas City Chiefs beat, by all accounts. Two miraculous plays from Mahomes on fourth downs basically saved that game. So he was basically going into the playoffs like nigh on undefeated, and just including the Chargers, who obviously ended his journey. But the Chargers are such a good outfit and complete on both sides of the ball that it's hard to catch them with the same trick twice. I was disappointed that the Ravens basically came out, played the same game plan from the start.
Yeah.
And once the Chargers shut that down...
It's a bit brain dead.
Yeah, I didn't understand it. And obviously Lamar was getting booed from the second quarter on. And
classy move.
Yeah, well, the Baltimore fans are notoriously hard to win over. Yeah. And there would be, whatever with Joe Flacco, and I'd be the first to... his demeanour doesn't do him any favours, but there is some residual grow for him. He delivered that Super Bowl. It was a remarkable playoff run from him. No interceptions in that. Beat Brady, Manning, Luck, and Kaepernick, who was on fire at the time. So he was brilliant, and he timed it brilliantly, obviously getting that contract, which is coming into the fore now as he looks set to look to pastures new, I think.
Yeah, he's going to get... he could be released at the end of the season. Harbaugh basically said, best of luck wherever you're going. You're a Saints fan.
Yeah.
Did you go to New Orleans? Is that where...
Yeah, I went to New Orleans 2006. It was just after Katrina, and it was...
On a J1?
No, I was just travelling around the States by myself. I was actually meant to go with somebody else, and she pulled out at the last minute, and I was like, no, I'm still going to go. So I did all of this like terrifying journey that, and I look back now and go, why the hell did I do that by myself? But I didn't get to see them that time because the Superdome wasn't reopened yet. Right. And I saw them when we were there in September. So, and they were just a really, like, they were such a part of the community there as well. And Reggie Bush had all these programs for kids involved with football. And it was just, they were kind of a unique team. And really, I loved them. I just followed them since.
Is the Superdome close to the city?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not like it's really near the French Quarter. It's like a 20-minute walk. Right. So it's like a total part. Like when they're doing game days, they're like tailgate. It's all the way through the city. It's mad. It's absolutely crazy.
Why are you a Baltimore fan? Is it The Wire?
No, it's. I think the first Super Bowl I watched, or I can remember, was I was watching Match of the Day, and the Patriots were going for the undefeated season, and Jake Humphrey was like, coming up next, we have the Super Bowl. Patriots are looking to make history here. I was like, oh, this is interesting. I watched the start of this, and then I ended up watching the whole thing. And I think Rod Woodson was on doing analysis, talking about the Ravens and Steelers, and then I just don't know. I just kind of fell into it, and I like the colour purple, so that was kind of those two reasons meshed, and that's what.
It's a very important reason.
So the Patriots were playing the Giants that night.
Yeah.
So they weren't even playing. It was just
no. It was just I needed to pick a team. I didn't want to pick the winners of the Super Bowl. I didn't want to pick the Patriots, who were the Man United of the thing.
Yeah.
So I said I'll pick a team in the middle there, and like one of the most storied franchises, the Ravens, given that they're pretty new, and just. Like Ozzie Newsome, who's
they stole a team basically.
Well, kind of, yeah. There's a lot in that. But Ozzie Newsome, who's about to retire, probably the greatest GM ever, and the first African American GM as well. Drafted Ray Lewis in his first ever draft drafted Ed Reed, who's the best player I've ever seen. So it's going to be tough to replace him, and it's difficult to see where the Ravens go from here. With Lamar Jackson at the helm, they're definitely giving him full backing. Whether Marty Morningweg is the right guy to sort of give him the elaborate offense that he didn't have at the weekend. He's not a running quarterback as such. If you watch his tape in college at Louisville, he's a quarterback who can run. Yeah. So if you let him in the pocket, give him a good offensive line, he can pick the passes, as we saw in the last quarter there.
Yeah.
He dropped some dimes.
Mad though.
The pass, was it Derwin James who was about to intercept the pass that keeps the whole thing, the fourth and long, whatever that was like a ridiculous, and it was a bit fluky because it goes right over Derwin James' head, and
because he didn't get to set his feet, he was scrambling because his line wasn't doing him any favours, and that was very much playground football. But if he's allowed to plant his feet, he can really launch them. And
I was kind of delighted they didn't bring Flacco back in, because in the third quarter we're like, oh, they're going to bring him back in. I was just really glad they stuck with Jackson.
And if you're the coach who is staying, it looks like he's got a new contract agreed, if it's not signed, then there's no way you can bring Flacco in, because you've just screwed the quarterback of the future over. But if you're a coach who's leaving, you probably bring Flacco in, because you think maybe there's a chance it might actually he might win.
It was a tough decision. You could see it in his eyes.
But even like Brady, who won those first couple of Super Bowls with Adam Vinatieri, really, and all he had to do was manage the game, get them into field goal range, keep things taking over, and to expect Lamar Jackson to go in there against one of the most complete teams in America and win the game on his own is ludicrous, really. So hopefully given Flacco's off the table now, there's more cap room to get some fun people in. Maybe Le'Veon Bell can come across from Pittsburgh, and that would be
wishful
great.
thinking.
Everybody is making the come hither.
Everyone has a plan for him.
But we'll see. I don't know what's going to happen with that, to be honest. 20 million quid a year. It's a lot of money.
What about Antonio Brown to San Francisco, Jerry? Are you excited?
Well, I saw somebody saying that there's no chance that the Steelers will give him what he wants, but if the offer's right, I mean, I don't know. I presume they're going to make peace with him. You have to assume they're going to make peace with Antonio Brown.
When you have the most talented player in the league, probably, and he's a troublemaker, like, you just have to try and find that balance where it's probably better to have him than play him.
So there's this thing about his cap number goes from 20 million to 7 million if they cut him or trade him after June. By that stage, they could have drafted a quarterback or traded for a quarterback and decided, Big Ben, thanks very much, but you know what, you're an asshole. This guy's also an asshole, but he's going to last for 3 seasons, and you've only got like 1.5 years left before you fall off your cliff.
It's really, the Antonio Brown thing's really taken off, given that they're not even in the playoffs. It's kind of the number one story still, and Ryan Clark, former teammate, is making some waves on ESPN with interesting comments about, because Antonio Brown came into the league low down the draft, was a punt returner, kick returner, and Mike Tomlin discovered this guy can really play, and he became the number one receiver because Mike Wallace didn't get the contract he wanted. And Ryan Clark basically told management, as soon as you pay this guy, you're going to have trouble on your hands, because he was a kind of a character before he had any money, and then when he was the highest paid guy, he was basically calling out Dick LeBeau, saying, don't let your defensive players touch me in practice. I am the franchise. So I think this was coming for a long time, and with Big Ben and him.
Yeah, I don't know if this is necessarily all Roethlisberger's fault.
I think that I'm happy to blame Ben Roethlisberger for anything that happens in his
most things. Okay, but there's some, like Bryant as well. I don't know if that's as clean cut as everyone thought it was.
Okay, Sue, you're here for your picks.
Yes, I did okay last week. Yeah. Considering, I lost in the Rams. Or the Ravens, sorry. -2.5 was, thanks very much.
Even I said the Chargers would win.
Yeah, you did actually. I went back out and he was like, I'd pick the Chargers. I went, you're a Ravens fan. So I pushed on the Dallas game in the end. And then I had the Eagles at +6. So I still think the Eagles are going to do okay here. But anyway, Colts to the Chiefs. I'm taking the Chiefs at -5. They have a really amazing offense. Mahomes is unreal, and I think they're a high-scoring team. I like the Colts, though, and I thought the defence played really well last week. So, I don't know, but I'm going to take the Chiefs. Cowboys at Rams.
Hang on, slow down. So, let's just go here. Handicap.
I have to disagree with you.
No, so Ronan's here. We're going to make him pick as well this week. Starting with the Colts.
Ronan.
Colts, the Chiefs.
I'm going to go with the Colts, I think. I love Andrew Luck.
I love the idea of it, but I don't know if they'll do it against the Chiefs.
The Chiefs have a terrible playoff record. They always seem to bottle it at home. I love the Chiefs. They've gotten a little bit less dynamic since the running back left hand, so I think it might be a year early for them, but by all accounts, I'd love to see Patrick Mahomes go as far as he can, but his future's bright regardless. I think if the Colts don't do it this year, they're coming first. They're the next dynasty in football because they've got loads of money.
Yeah, they're an exciting team.
And a lot of rookies. So it's going to be, if it's not this year for the Colts, it'll probably be next year. But I'm going to pick them this week, I think.
Yeah, definitely +5. Take the points. Go on.
I'm going to take the Chiefs. Cowboys and the Rams. I am controversially going to take Dallas. I don't know. I think that spread might be a little bit big, and I think Dallas might.
Yeah, +7.5. There's been a lot of action.
Yeah.
All of the spreads I think have come in since Monday when they went up first. There were huge spreads at the start of the week. So people like Dallas. I wonder how much of this is the fact we haven't seen the Rams play their full team in a while and in a competitive match that matters. Like
they've been kind of returning
the last game of the season, so that wasn't a real game. It was over after the first quarter and they could rest players. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's something about the Cowboys as well. Like there is something to be said about momentum, and I think the Colts and maybe the Cowboys have it a little bit. So I think I'm going to take Dallas at +7.5.
And teams, it often seems to be the pattern that whoever gets hot towards the end of the season just rolls into the playoffs and takes it by storm. The Rams were hot at the wrong time of the year. Like they were brilliant.
Yeah,
one of the best teams I'd seen in recent times now.
Now, unless they've been managing this whole thing and they understand because they were there last year and they crapped out this.
That's true as well, yeah.
Like that experience is there. McVay, as a very young coach, probably has to go through a little bit of that.
Well, like Todd Gurley, if he is actually healthy, they've obviously sat him a couple of weeks, but
CJ Anderson's been amazing though. He's had more 150-yard rushing games than Todd Gurley has had this season, and he's played 2 games.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good. Now, obviously, Todd Gurley is getting 100 yards through the air in every game. So, you're picking. Who are you picking?
With the spread.
Talking yourself into both of these?
With the spread, I think you have to go with Dallas. I think that's generous now. I like the Rams. Home advantage is a non-event because there'll be more Dallas fans at this game than
exactly.
Rams fans. So I think I'll go with Dallas +7.5. Yeah.
The Chargers or the Patriots?
I'm taking the Chargers in this. Even though Patriots have a really good home record, they're 8-0 at home, I think, actually, aren't they? Yeah, I think they've won all their home games. But the Chargers are good on the road. Their record's amazing on the road.
8-1.
Yeah, and I just think, I like watching them last week. They're a very good team with a very good quarterback and a good defense.
Are we overrating the fact that they should have killed Baltimore and that they were really bad in the red zone, or are we giving Baltimore some credit for that?
No, I totally agree with that. I think if you look at the numbers in isolation, you're like, how did the Chargers even win that game? But they did force turnovers. Their game plan was exceptional. The whole playing 7 DBs, I'm not sure that's going to work against the Patriots. If you bring the same game plan to Tom Brady that you brought last week, he's gonna watch all that tape. So they're going to have to bring something new wrinkle. I do think the Chargers are going to win this game. I've been trying to talk myself out of it because Tom Brady's Tom Brady and they're undefeated in that stadium. But I just think the Chargers, personnel-wise, they're more complete in every aspect, I would say. And at this stage of his career, Philip Rivers is arguably a better quarterback than Tom Brady. He managed the game last week. I think if he needs to bring out the bells and whistles this week, he'll be able to do it. And much like the last game, there's no home advantage or away road perspective for the Chargers because their home games aren't home games either.
Yeah.
It's played in Carson in a stadium.
It's cold, though.
Yeah.
It's cold.
It is cold, yeah.
Yeah, but like the other thing about, like, I just don't know about the Chargers in general. I know. I'm definitely going to take them +4. I was going back there for a minute because I was just thinking about the Brady factor.
Change your pick on air.
I nearly changed my pick because I was thinking about Brady and then I went no, because the other thing about the Chargers, I think we haven't seen them all season. I feel like they've always been the really late game. I haven't seen enough of them play, and then when I saw them against the Ravens, I was like, oh, this is why they're this good. Yes, they are very good.
I don't even think they'll need the points. I think they'll win that game.
All right, well, that's interesting. Okay, so they're +4.
Yeah.
And then the Eagles at the Saints, the Eagles +8, whopping 8 points for Nick Foles.
Yeah, I'm taking the Eagles. Not to just on the spread. I think that's a massive spread, and like, I don't know. There is a Nick Foles factor. Wentz is healthy though, isn't he? And they're just going to still continue playing Foles.
No, Wentz is
definitely not going to come back in. I definitely think there's some sort of momentum with Foles. That's like apparently there's some shrine in the locker room for Foles. There's some weird thing about that team and Foles. He's their Super Bowl quarterback. They love him. I think you can pull out all the stats in the world, but there's something weird about the fact that the Eagles keep getting over the line with these games with him as a quarterback. And I thought their defence was really good last week. They sorted out a lot of the problems they had early in the season. They seem to be a more strong, more complete team than they were.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about that.
I don't know.
Like, the Saints are amazing, and I support Saints obviously. So
I think the Saints are brilliant in most aspects, and like the Foles thing has to stop at some stage. Wentz went into that building a few weeks ago, and the Eagles got absolutely destroyed. And Wentz is a more talented quarterback than Nick Foles is. The whole debate around those two is so interesting. I'm sure there's instances in other sports where someone less talented just meshes better with his teammates, and Wentz is probably trying to be more precise, whereas Foles is trusting his receivers. He's putting it up there and seeing what happens.
It's a tricky situation too. You get injured, you're like this franchise-changing quarterback that they trade a load of picks to get. You come in, you're starting to play really well, you get injured, the guy comes in and replaces you and wins the Super Bowl. What are you supposed to do? I mean, how do I beat this?
But like Wentz was on course for an MVP season last year, and he never really blew the lights out this year at all, so he's probably still recovering from his injury. And
yeah, they played him too early. We were talking about that before. They just played him way too early in the season.
They didn't have to play him, that was the thing.
Yeah.
Foles was not playing very well at the start of the season.
No.
And got injured, didn't he?
Yeah, he was.
So like they kind of...
there's some kind of magic.
Oh, I'm really sore, that guy over there. oh, you're not really ready yet, Crash, are you? Pity about that. You might go out and break your back for me there, and I can come in and take over the rest of the season.
I don't know. They're exciting though. They're exciting to watch.
Yeah, these are good games.
But as well as that, like, I kind of agree with you. There is an element in he's throwing a ball down a pitch and hoping that somebody's going to be at the end of it.
Yeah.
It isn't really that precise what he's doing.
Yeah, it's sort of when Wentz looks down the field.
Jeffrey's going to do it.
Yeah, when Wentz looks down the field and sees Alshon Jeffrey's double covered, he's like, nah, I'll check down to earth here. Whereas Foles says, I trust him to go up and get it. And there's probably a trust level there with Jeffrey that's not there with Wentz.
So you're both picking the Eagles?
No, I'm taking the Saints.
With the points?
Yeah.
It's going to be a blowout then. These are the games where there are blowouts in the last 10 minutes, where teams are like, my season's over, I'm going on holidays. And there were none really last week. Even Houston tried to make a game of it because they were at home. So, all right. So, a quick recap. You're taking the Colts?
No, I'm taking the Chiefs. Chiefs, Cowboys, Chargers and the Eagles.
All right, 3 away teams, 1 home team, given points in one instance and taking the rest of the points. Sue, thanks very much. Ronan, welcome to the show. Thanks very much.
Jared. Thanks for having me.
That is the NFL OTB podcast this week. If you would like to get in touch, you can drop us a tweet, or indeed you can leave a comment under the live stream, and we'll get to it. We'll see you next week for the championship games. Good luck.